Lunchtime is over.
What's that?
Your keys, man.
I see you've played knifey spoony before. Hey!
What's up everyone, it's Adam from FWCI and this is my spoiler-free review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I saw yesterday. I took a night to sort of marinate on it before I did the review, and I won't be speaking about spoilers in this video at all, but when the pitch meeting for this movie by Ryan George comes up, that's usually where I get into more spoiler talk. So if you want to see more of a review that isn't, you know, tiptoeing around spoilers, check out my pitch meeting reaction when it does come out. I think they usually take a week or so for some of the bigger movies with Ryan George. So that should be coming up sometime in the near future. But let's talk about the movie, because this is James Gunn's last MCU movie. This is his swan song. This is his goodbye. He's, you know, the king of the DC cinematic universe now, which after seeing this movie, it makes me more excited for DC than anything else. But going into this, a lot of the actors have sort of said that this is the last time we're going to see this version of the Guardians together. So the big question was, you know, who is going to be in the team by the end? And we definitely get a very clear answer for that, which I was happy to see. But that's very much the story, is that this team is barely holding on by a thread, and the emotional stakes of this movie and the emotion that this movie emitted from me and from my partner as well was next level. And this is why I feel that this movie is very much an indication of James Gunn and what he can do with his, you know, skill set, more so than it was like a big part of the MCU in general. Like, and that's not a knock or anything like that. Just the story that was told. This was so centered on all the characters from the Guardians movie. They did a great job bookending this trilogy, the Guardians trilogy, where the characters came in and what their thoughts were, or their story, or their motivation, or whatever it was in the first movie. I think they did a great job of bringing all of that full circle at the end of the third movie. And Drax, Nebula, for the most part, they seem to end up back in that same mindset, I think, that they were in at the start. With the exception of a few, there are definitely some characters that go on to do other things, but I really recommend watching the other two movies before you go and see number 3, because it really is a great send-off for this team, like, and not just this team, but this series and this franchise in general. But my personal thoughts are that the Marvel Cinematic Universe hit its, like, real first wave of mainstream popularity when the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out. I think that movie proved a lot to a lot of people. It proved to Marvel fans that these characters that we've never really heard of can come into the MCU and be awesome, and we're into it and it's fantastic. And it also taught people that weren't fans of the MCU that this franchise wasn't just a, you know, shoot 'em up superhero kind of story. There was going to be a lot of, you know, joy and heart in the MCU, and The Guardians was definitely the first movie to really tap into that whole vibe. And these Guardians movies have been quite separate from the rest of the MCU. Like, the only time we've seen them cross over was in the Avengers movies. So again, these movies really felt like their own sort of separate trilogy in a lot of ways. If I just go through the cast list and sort of give my sort of one word sort of thoughts on, you know, all the different characters. Star-Lord is hurting. There's still a lot of unfinished business with this new version of Gamora that exists in this universe post Endgame. Speaking of Gamora, her character in here was, there's no criticism to it, but her character was just so, it was frustrating, but in a good sort of plotline kind of way, is how I felt. Like, it was hard to empathize with Gamora through this, but you also understand exactly why. So it's not like a knock on the character or anything like that. Groot in this movie, I think he took a little bit of a back seat, to be honest. I would have liked to have seen more Groot, especially more Groot and Rocket, because that's where we, you know, really started the Guardians series, was Groot and Rocket rolling around together on the one with Glenn Close. You know the planet. The one that Thanos vaporized. Speaking of Rocket Raccoon, he is definitely I feel like he's the main character of this movie, and we see a little bit of it in the trailer, but there's a whole series of flashbacks of Rocket's origin story scattered throughout this movie. It's something that they kind of flash back and forward to and from, and it is rough. It is really, really sad. It is really, really heartbreaking. It's uncomfortable to watch at times. It's adorable. It is the most, like, you know, heartwarming and heartbreaking thing I think I've ever seen in the MCU. Like, these flashback scenes, I cannot stress enough, especially for people that are sensitive to animals. Like, my partner, we could just see, like, an animal on the side of the road that's, and in Australia, you know, we get it. It happens. Like, but if we see, like, an animal on the side of the road, she's distressed by it. Even just driving past it, she doesn't like to look at it. It really kind of bothers her to see, you know, an animal that is, you know, hurting or dead or anything like that. And this movie was just absolutely savage. She was weeping outwardly throughout a lot of those scenes with Rocket, and not in like a way that she was like, oh, this is too much, but in a way that it just kind of really, really got into her heartstrings and really kind of tugged at it. So Rocket, in my opinion, is the main character of this movie. We get so much time with him. We also get to spend a bit of time with Nebula. She's one of those characters that I guess doesn't end up where she started. She doesn't end up evil by the end of this movie. Spoiler alert, Nebula's not evil. But we've been witnessing her growth throughout the series, especially even over the Christmas special that they did, which I think that complemented this series perfectly. Go check out the reaction. And the relationship with Nebula and Gamora was a very interesting one, especially, you know, after the movie, when you sort of look back and start reflecting on their relationship as a whole throughout the entire series. Drax, I feel like this is probably the least Draxy we've seen him be. And again, this movie, even though there's a lot of comedy in it, because it is, you know, Guardians and everything like that, overall it's a really serious movie, but they did it in the right way. I mean, if you take a look at Ant-Man, for example, the first two movies were hilarious, and then the third one was like super serious, and the comedy didn't really land, and it was a little bit like nothing really happened, and they kind of just plopped this comedy character into a serious setting, where in this one they've got serious things happening to comedic characters, if that makes sense. The way it's kind of done is it doesn't feel so forced and so shoehorned in. It makes sense that this movie has this tone when you consider the story that gets told. Mantis is another character that we see a lot of growth with Mantis, and it's so fun to see where she came from and where she is now, and how spending all that time with the Guardians has changed her personality. I think that was a big highlight of the movie for me. And Mantis, since she came into the series, has been a highlight of this series. Pom Clementine, I think that's how we say her name. She's absolutely awesome, and she kills it as Mantis every time she's in anything at all. Having a look at the villain side of things, the High Evolutionary. I think he's played by the guy who played Mern in Peacemaker. Let's try this one. Chakudi Iwuji? Chakudi Iwuji. I think that's how we say it. He was genuinely terrifying. And this movie, for a PG movie, they got a lot out of their PG in this movie. This was pretty, like I say, the flashback scenes were quite rough, but there's plenty of other stuff in this movie that was really unsettling and gruesome and graphic. Like, I don't know who the audience is for this, but like, there are going to be kids that go to see this that are like traumatized by some of the things they probably see. And I don't know, it worked for me. Like, personally, I thought it added to just the feeling of unease that kind of surrounded the High Evolutionary character. So I really enjoyed the work of Chukwudi Iwuji, if I'm not butchering that completely, of course. Kraglin is still floating around. He has a great storyline in this that I'm not going to spoil, but he has some really fun moments, and they really round out his character's journey in this movie quite well. Cosmo the Space Dog, voiced by Maria Bakalova. She's known for playing Borat's daughter in the recent Borat movie. Hilarious character. Loved it. It's another example of Marvel using CGI in a really, really good way, and having just this beautiful, hilarious, funny storyline for this character to have. And the character has a lot of capabilities as well, we'll say as well. So Cosmo the Space Dog is a very welcome addition to this franchise. I was very entertained by that character. And lastly, the addition of Adam Warlock to the MCU. You know, his name's Adam, so I'm already on board with this character. But I didn't know what the hell to think about this, because this is a character that was teased at the end of Guardians 2, I think it was, which is quite some time ago. And we keep thinking that Adam Warlock is going to come into the MCU, and now that he's here, the way that they've done it, I feel like it's not a joke, but like I feel like they're kind of self-aware of how long people have been waiting for this character to be in the MCU, and they do some very entertaining things with the character of Adam Warlock. I'm not sure what he's like in the comics, but I have a feeling that people that are really into, if you're a huge fan of Adam Warlock in the comics, chances are you've already seen the movie by now, and chances are you may be surprised, because I was certainly surprised. He was not what I expected him to be, but I was here for it. I thought it was very fun and an interesting choice with the casting, but it totally worked. It totally paid off. In terms of the after credit scenes, there were two. The mid credit one was pretty important to the future of the Guardians franchise, and the last one was a little bit underwhelming. I think there's more to it that I'm probably not like clicking on. I did watch the Eric Voss breakdown of the final thing, and I don't know, it still feels like it's a little bit empty in a way. So the very far after credit one didn't really do a great deal for me, which is a bit of a shame, because it's the last Guardians, and it would have been great to get some sort of epic, memorable. Although with that being said, the Guardians movie is not exactly known for their amazing after credit scenes. I'm looking at you, Howard the Duck. There's still a lot of callbacks to the old movies throughout, but they really put those references in the right spot, and they really lended themselves to the story in a lot of ways. Some of them were just kind of Easter eggs, but I found that the way they used the greater universe that they'd built was really, really good. And again, to me, that just says that DC could be in some very capable hands. And you know, I know a lot of people are very nervous about DC because their track record has been like almost 100% garbage for the last, 10 years plus. But I'm a fan of James Gunn, and I think he's got the right kind of skill set to be able to put together a great extended universe. And the way he resolved the Guardians franchise, I think, is a very strong example of what we're going to see in the future. But a lot of other characters in this as well. Again, some absolutely heartbreaking, some hilarious, some terrifying. Like there's so much happening in this movie. It is a pretty long movie, but it didn't feel like it was dragging out too much. Like when we got to the final battle, it was very much like, okay, here we go. Like I wasn't like counting down the seconds or anything like that. But let me know your spoiler-free thoughts down in the comments. Also, if you haven't seen it yet and you watch this, don't look at the comments anyway, because somebody's probably going to spoil something down there at some point. So protect yourself, go watch the other movies first, and then have a look at my reaction to the Ryan George Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 pitch meeting, whenever that comes up in the next week or so, and I'll go into some more specific detail about this fantastic movie. I'm not going to give it a rating system, because, I don't know, I don't do enough of these for that to mean anything. I'd be like 4 stars, and everyone's like, is that normal? But I hope you enjoyed this quick little review. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I have reacted to Marvel's What If, Hawkeye, the Werewolf by Night, and the Guardians Christmas special on the channel here. So go check out my MCU playlist. I'll link it at the end so you can see what my thoughts are on some other Marvel stuff. Because, I mean, I watched She-Hulk on here, Miss Marvel, and I dig them. Let me kind of clarify this, actually. So I am the kind of person that looks for things to enjoy. I look for things in movies that I like, and I try not to focus on minor things that, kind of bug me, or that maybe I look out of place or anything like that. Unless it's egregious, there is obviously a scale, but for the most part, I come out of things feeling pretty optimistic. With that being said, there are movies that I've seen that are absolute god-awful shit, like Assassin's Creed, for example. The new Blade Runner movie, good lord, that thing was like... I watched that with my mate, and then on the way out, I was like, god damn it, I was bored out of my skull like an hour in, and he's like, oh, so was I, and I was like, shit, we could have left. and we were, yeah, not that impressed with the new Blade Runner. So I will criticize a movie if I feel like it is warranted, but for the most part, I try and just focus on the parts of it that I did enjoy. I called that like a traumatic response from being a wrestling fan for so long, when 90% of the show sucks and there's only like one match in the whole company that I'm actually looking forward to. So maybe that's where the issue is there, but thanks for checking this video out, and as always, be well, stay safe, look after your friends, see you in the next video. Peace!